Hi everyone, I'm going to be tier ranking the 100 books I read in 2024. For those of you new here, my name's Liz. I rediscovered my love for reading and decided to set out a very ambitious goal for me that I never would have thought possible, which was to read 100 books in a year. I really had a learning year of discovering what type of books work for me. I read a lot of the really popular ones, but I also read a lot of nonfiction. So in this mix, you'll see kind of a mixture of fiction books and nonfiction. This was my breakdown of the books I completed last year. Without further ado, let's just dive right in. I'm going to give little to no explanation, or else this video would be way too long with 100 books. So let me go share my screen. Okay guys, so I started the year by continuing the Shatter Me series, which is a dystopian young adult. I don't think I'm quite the right demographic for this, so keep in mind when I'm putting these here, I'm gonna do, I Feel Mixed for these. I did really like Ignite Me though, but it doesn't stand out to me enough to be in the so good category, so I'm gonna stick it there. The Love Hypothesis, I'm gonna put under pretty good. I remember liking the STEM, it's like a STEM romance. I used to work in health research, and so I kind of related to some aspects of it. But then I read her next book and I really didn't like it. It was not for me. I think I'm going to put it under was not for me. I could see how this could be for some people, but for me, I didn't really like the characters in it, and I thought it was really cringy, like way too cringy for me. Then I read Viola Davis's memoir, totally opposite of these books, and this was really good. I'm going to put this under so good. Then I read Piranesi, which is a very odd book, but I actually really liked it. I wouldn't consider it so good though. I'm going to put it under pretty good. I felt like the ending I would have liked more fleshed out in order for me to rate it higher, but the experience reading it was really good. Then there's Manacled, and this one's an easy, should have DNF'd. This is a 900 something page book, guys. And it had such an intriguing beginning that I kept with it, but I wish I would have DNF'd it. It is like a 26-hour audiobook or something completely crazy. It's a fan fiction, and I was just intrigued by the plot, but they didn't wrap it up. It felt like you were building up to something for them not even to resolve it. So I did not love that. And should have DNF'd. And then there's Powerless, and I feel like I'm in between was not for me and should have DNF'd with this, which I know is very controversial. This one was just too copy and paste of the Hunger Games for me, way too. I like a lot of the romantasy genre. Like I loved Fourth Wing, I loved the Akhtar series, so I thought I was gonna like this, but it really was a disappointment for me. I thought it was way too much of a copy and paste. So I'm debating. I think I'm just gonna put it under was not for me. Then I've read one of my favorite books, probably actually the favorite book of the year, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Oh, so good. I've talked a lot about that on this channel. And then I read When True Loves. This was very good. I really enjoyed this. And Crying in H Mart. So this is a memoir, and I thought it was really good, but I did just the prior month had read I'm Glad My Mother Died, which is dealing with the grieving of a mother as well who died, and I think it was just too much back to back. So I do want to give that caveat that I think I'm going to put this under pretty good, because I think it was just too much grief back to back in months with the memoirs for me. Rock, Paper, Scissors. I really enjoyed this. I'm going to put this under pretty good. It's a mystery thriller. It takes place in a snowy cabin. It's actually a great book to read during the winter time. So I do recommend that if you like mystery thrillers. And then Time Management for Mortals. This is called 4,000 Week Time Management for Mortals. This was a really, really good book. If you are like me and you tend to think like you have so many things you want to do constantly, this book is going to be really good for you, because it really talks about how you need to prioritize and you can't accomplish everything, and you only have about 4,000 weeks to live. So how do you want to spend that time? I thought it was really good, really, really good. He takes notes too, like he summarizes at the end of chapters, which I always really appreciate for nonfiction books that are like dense with information. Then we have another nonfiction. This is Britney Spears' memoir. I'm going to put this under I Feel Mixed. I do think it was interesting to read. I think especially when it comes to understanding like how messed up the guardianship can be in situations like this, and how they can really take advantage of someone, even someone so famous. Which, for those of you who don't know, Britney Spears' parents had guardianship over her, and they definitely exploited her. And so I thought that was interesting. I think the reason I feel mixed about it is I would have preferred if she had opened up a little bit more about the mental health struggles she did have. And maybe she wasn't capable of that, which I am fully aware sometimes that's not capable. But I think for me, what would have made this higher ranking is if maybe she had opened up a little bit about the mental health struggles she did have. But then again, I understand why she wouldn't, because it's been used against her so much. So yeah, I feel mixed. All right, Iron Flame. I'm going to put this under pretty good. I loved Fourth Wing. It was a 5-star book for me. This is the second one of that series. This one did feel rushed, so I still enjoyed being in the world, though, so I'm going to put it under pretty good. Next, The Storied Life of A.J. Vickery. I'm going to put this under pretty good. I remember giving it, I think, a 4.5, but it doesn't stand out to me enough. Like, it's not one of those ones that I think about often, which would be in these categories up top. So I'm going to put it under pretty good. I read Terms and Conditions, and for those that know this series probably know that this is the second one in the series. And that's because I DNF'd the first one because the cringe was just way too much for me. But then I heard other people say that Terms and Conditions is better. So I picked up that one, and I thought it was okay. I still think it's just not my favorite series. I think the whole, I've learned that there's certain types of romance books that just don't work for me. And for me, I need something more than just romance typically in the books that I read that are under the category romance. Like, they need to either have some literary fiction or some fantasy, or it has to have some sort of other plot other than just the romance. And so So to keep that in mind as I'm ranking some of these, that I might be ranking them lower if I just didn't feel like it kind of was my type of book. Never Lie, I actually really enjoyed. For a mystery thriller, I thought this was really good. And then we have one of my favorite books ever, Remarkably Bright Creatures. So good. And then there's Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is the second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, and I thought this one was really good. I gave it 5 stars. And then we have Being Mortal. This was such a good book, and I am on the fence between So Good and Best of the Best with this one, because I do, usually the best of the best, I have no notes, and I did have a note for this one, which was just that I wished he would have provided kind of some bulleted points at the end for questions that we should ask our loved ones. Because this deals with end of life care and what really matters in the end. And I think that would have been really helpful. So I'm going to put it under So Good, but I definitely highly recommend that book. Then I read Beach Read, and this was the start of multiple Emily Henry books I read. And I really do enjoy Emily Henry as an author. This one I didn't enjoy as much as some of her other books, so I'm going to put it under pretty good. It's a cute little rom-com. Then I read Malibu Rising, and this was a 5-star read for me. It doesn't stand out for me enough to be under Best of the Best, but I had such a good time reading this. I also was reading this when I was in Baja doing a van life road trip, and a lot of this book takes place in I think it's 1980s or 1970s California, which has similar vibes to Baja. So I think that really added to my experience with this book. But I loved it. Taylor Jenkins Reid is just a really talented author. I continued with kind of a beach read week when I was in Baja, and I read Same Time Next Summer, and I thought this was super cute, but it doesn't stand out to me, I feel enough to be under the So Good category, but I did give it a 4.5 star. So I'm going to put it under pretty good. I liked kind of the underlying message around kind of really just finding your true self and being yourself. A lot of her books are kind of they have literary fiction elements to it, which I really enjoyed. So I'm going to put that there. Then I read Paris, the memoir. If you had told my younger self that I would have ever read the memoir of Paris, I would have said absolutely not. I was really never a fan of her. I thought she kind of honestly was a little bit of a disgrace to women, because she always played dumb and I don't know. I just really didn't like her growing up. But I kept hearing people talk highly about her memoir, so I decided to try it. And it was actually really interesting. The subject matter she explores, which is this terrible discipline kind of boot campy school that she went to. I knew someone who also went to a school experience like that and had horrific experiences. And so for me, this kind of gave me more insight into what she went through and just kind of the horrors that can happen there. So I thought this was really good. I'm not going to put under so good because the ending, she talks a lot about like stuff that I just don't care about, like partying and like, I don't know, that whole side of her that I just have no interest in. Then I read People We Meet on Vacation, and this was so good. I loved this book. This is tied with another book, which we'll get to, for my favorite Emily Henry books. I loved this specifically, I think, because A, I love the friends to lover trope, and B, it's about a woman who travels, and like I spent a lot of time traveling, and so I really related to the character. I love the different settings where they were in different travel destinations. So yeah, I loved that. Born a Crime. I loved this book. Honestly, I'm between best of the best and so good with this one. I think I'm gonna do so good just because I don't remember every single detail about it. But my reading experience was so good. Like, I don't have any notes, so maybe I should put under best of the best, but I don't remember it. I feel like enough for the best of the best, but like from what I remember, it was really interesting. I listened to this with my husband when we were road tripping in Baja, and yeah, it was really, really good. Then I read my first Brandon Sanderson, Trust of the Emerald Sea. I'm between I Feel Mixed and Pretty Good. I think I'm going to do Pretty Good, specifically because of the magic system. I do think it was really unique, but it didn't have enough plot for me to be like, yes, everyone should 100% read this. The Last Love Letter, I did not like this. It was just not for me. I thought there was too much, from what I remember, it was just like too much trauma, like it was unnecessary and it didn't feel like it fit. So I didn't love that. Next one is a memoir, What My Bones Know. This explores complex trauma and generational trauma that passes. And I thought that was really interesting learning more about that. But this book dragged just kind of way too long. She took you on like her whole process of kind of coming to terms with it. And it just felt like it could have been shortened. So I'm going to put this under Pretty Good. Oh, then we have Kristen Hanna, The Great Alone. This was so good. I love Kristen Hanna. She does historical fiction. At least the books that I've read, they've all been historical fiction, and they're all really good. In The Dream House, this is a memoir that's very uniquely written. It's very lyrical and almost has like picture like gaslight mystery kind of elements to it. So I'm going to put it under Pretty Good. For me, it was a little too lyrical at times, but it was a unique reading experience for sure. Then I read Cricket Kingdom, and I feel mixed on this one. I didn't love this one as much as the first one, The Six of Crows. This is the second one in the Six of Crows series. And so I was kind of in a reading slump when I read that though, so keep that in mind. Then I read The Perfectionist's Guide to Losing Control. This is a nonfiction. I really enjoyed this. I've talked about this with people in my life quite a bit. And if you're a perfectionist, you're probably like, oh, that sounds horrific. I don't want to lose control. But really, it's about harnessing your superpower that is your perfectionism. And it talks about the different types of perfectionism. The reason I'm not rating this higher, gosh, I'm debating between Pretty Good and So Good, though. I'm going to do Pretty Good just because I don't remember all the takeaways enough. Like, I haven't really applied anything into my life, if that makes sense, after reading this book. So I'm going to put it under Pretty Good. And then we have Just for the Summer, Abby Jimenez. She's probably my favorite rom-com author. I'm going to do So Good for this. This was so close to a 5-star. I debated between 4.75 and 5-star. The only reason I didn't give it a 5-star was definitely like, I think a personal thing. I would have preferred a more nuanced ending. But overall, it's such good. And I've recommended that to people in my life for sure. I really related to the character in that book. Then there's The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, another historical fiction. This one follows the Dust Bowl era. I really liked this. This is so good. Gave this 5 stars. Okay, so I lumped all the Magnolia Park series together here because I thought that would be easier, and I honestly feel mixed about all these, so I figured this would be the way to do it. So this is a hugely popular series for those of you who don't know. I've read all of them besides one that is out so far. I still have to read the last one. And it's in a good time reading it. Like, it's very addicting reading it. I like the writing style. But the reason I feel mixed is that it's such toxic relationships that the book goes over that it was really just kind of painful to read sometimes. So yeah, I feel mixed about it. Project Hail Mary is next. You guys know this is, oh, didn't mean to put it there. This is the best of the best to me. Such a good 6-star read for me. And then there's a Psalm for the Wild Built. I'm going to put this under so good. It's a very short book, but it's cute. Then I read Mother Nature by Jedediah Jenkins. I'd read his previous memoir, which was about biking from Oregon down to Patagonia. And I loved that book. It's called To Shake the Sleeping Self. Unreal. So good. And so I was really curious to try another one of his books. And I went into this with the wrong expectations. I, for some reason, thought that this was about him and his mother doing a journey hiking across America, but it turns out it wasn't about that. Really, this book is essentially about he's gay, and his mother is very evangelical religious and doesn't think that his lifestyle is okay. And it kind of explores the dynamics between that, but he does it in such a loving manner with his mother that I think it was really good. I did, like I said, I think I didn't enjoy it as much as I should have just because I was in such a mood for like a adventure travel kind of book, but I do think it was handled really well and with a lot of love for his mother still. Okay, so then there was Love Redesigned, and this was not for me. It's just that style of romance. I don't even know how to describe it that I just don't like. Like, I don't like romance that's like mostly just romance, and I don't like smutty romance or excessively spicy romance. So it was just not for me. Then there's Lifespan. Oh, this is so good. I'm going to put this under the best of the best. I talked about this in my year-end wrap-up. Highly recommend that. Very enthusiastic author, and he's a Harvard researcher and gives all the latest research on longevity. Super interesting. Then I feel like I have a very controversial take on this book, but I feel like On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, I should have DNF'd. This won some literary prize, so I think I'm in the minority here, but it was very lyrical writing, and I felt like there was kind of no point to it. I thought it was going to get to this like really poignant aspect, and I really didn't get there. And I thought it was lyrical, but it felt like forced lyrical, if that makes sense. So for me, it did not work. But then I read another best of the best to me, The In-Between, Unforgettable Moments During Life's Final Moments. I'm going to think about this book always, so I'm going to put it under best of the best. It's about a hospice nurse who discusses some commonalities she's seen with patients during their final moments in life. Super good. Beartown. This is also going to be best of the best. Frederick Bachman, amazing author. Loved that. Funny Story. I gave this 4-star, I believe. I'm going to put it under pretty good. It's a cute little rom-com. Then there's Ultra Processed People. This was so good. This is a nonfiction book that talks about our food industry. And in it, he interviews different people who've worked in the food industry as well, and talks about how like the food industry puts things in our food that makes it more addicting and makes it more shelf stable at the cost of our health. And it was really good. Definitely recommend that. You with a View. I really liked this book. I'm definitely biased because they go on a road trip in it, and they go to different national parks. And you guys know I'm obsessed with travel. And there's a grandpa relationship dynamic explored in this. So I really liked this. Gosh, I'm debating so good or pretty good. I think I'm still going to do pretty good. I think I remember just a few things I didn't love, so I think I gave it 4 stars. Then there's When in Rome. I'm going to do pretty good. Then there's Matthew Perry's memoir. And this one, I'm going to do I Feel Mixed. I do think this could be interesting for someone who wants to understand kind of someone who has just such severe addiction. But there's just some aspects about the way it was written that felt a little bit egotistical to me. And like, he talks about how women want to sleep with him and how much money he had. And just like, I don't know, it came across on paper as being a bit egotistical. So I didn't love that aspect. Then Happy Place. And this was so good. This is the Emily Henry book that I was mentioning that is tied with people who we meet on vacation for me. I adored this. This is a second chance romance explored, but it also explores kind of like a friend dynamic. So it's kind of equal parts second chance romance and like friends dynamic of a group of friends that always meets at this, I think it's an island or a beach house at least each year. Then I started the Bewitched series, and I never hear people talk about this, but I loved this series. Like, I was blown away. I had a free trial on Kindle Unlimited, so I was just like exploring different books on there, and I really enjoyed this. I think I'm going to do so good for the first one, and then the second one I'm going to do pretty good. The second one was just a little bit smutty for my taste, but overall I really liked the series. Kind of has Vampire Diaries meets Harry Potter meets like a touch of Indiana Jones in the first book. So I really enjoyed it. Okay, guys, sorry. I think I've talked too long that it stopped recording on me. So I'm going to try to move quicker. I don't know where it cut off, but I was talking about the women, so maybe it was there. This one I thought was really good. So I'm going to put it under there. And I feel like I have a really controversial take on this. Tom Lake, I felt like I should have DNF'd. I remember just going through it and just being so bored, and I just pushed through it because this one gets such rave reviews for a lot of people, but I just found it kind of boring. I think it just didn't have enough plot for me. I did give it a 3.75, which is funny because I just was curious and like, what did I give it? But yeah, for me, I felt like I should have DNF'd it. All right, then I read some of the Chestnut Spring series. Everyone online talked about this, so I was definitely influenced during this time to read this because, yeah, it's raved about. However, to me, I don't think Flawless was for me. I can see how it could be for some people, though, but it's a bit of too much of that kind of insta-lovey, smutty thing for my taste. But I pushed through and read the next in the series, and I'm going to go a little out of order here because I think it makes sense to talk of these at the same time. And I actually really did enjoy Heartless. So I'm going to put that one under there. I don't know if I'm going to continue the series. I still haven't decided. Then I read The Housemaid, and this was a really good time for a mystery thriller. I do think this is very good. I was on the edge of my seat. I wanted to binge it. All the things you want in a mystery thriller. So that was good. Then I read the Mind F series. I think that's the word. It's a series of 5 novellas. I just put it here in one, but I read that and I thought that was so good. And this was a surprise to me because I didn't think the premise I would love. So like the premise I kept hearing people talk about online is it's about a woman who's a serial killer, and she starts dating an FBI agent who is a serial killer profiler and is like trying to solve her case as well. I didn't think I would enjoy this as much as I did, but I really do. I feel like I don't want to give too much away, so maybe I'm not going to say, but I definitely think this is good. I really enjoyed it. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I feel mixed about this one. I could have done without, didn't mean to put there. I could have done without it. I loved The Hunger Games. I was a huge fan of The Hunger Games, but for this one, I don't know. It was just okay to me. Okay, and then I finally finished, and this took me months, which some nonfiction books I honestly take months to go through because they're so dense, and this is one of them. This is called Patient Zero, and it explores like all the different like big diseases and kind of how they got started, and it gives a little bit of history about it. I did think that was really interesting. I do think the author could have done this in a way that was more engaging and intriguing. It felt like I was reading a textbook. And I have my master's in public health, so it felt very much nostalgic of public health school for me, my graduate school. So I'm going to do I Feel Mixed. I think if you're really interested and want to just like look up certain diseases, I think that it's a good use case for this book. But just to go through the entire thing, I think it could have been done in a more engaging way. All right, so then I read my first McFarry, I think is her last name, book just last night. I saw Haley Pham rave about this author, so I decided to pick her up, and I really liked it. I am going to do pretty good, just because it doesn't stand out for me enough to be under the so good category, but I had a really good time reading it, and I'm glad I did. And then I read Summer Romance. Loved this book so much. This was my favorite romance of the year. Let's see, I'm debating if I should put it under So Good or Best of the Best. See, I loved it afterwards, and it was really the messaging in it that I loved, but I don't know if it stands out for me enough. I don't know if I'm going to remember certain aspects of it enough to put under Best of the Best. So I'm going to keep it under So Good. And then we have The Midnight Library, another So Good one. And then I read Freakonomics, and I should have DNF'd this, guys. I think this is another one of those controversial opinions, though, because I saw that this gets really good ratings on Goodreads. But to me, it was so basic. I didn't learn anything new. I felt like I was just pushing through it at the end because I'm like, I don't know why. Sometimes I feel like I need to push myself through books when I shouldn't. So this is an example of one I should have just DNF'd. There was nothing new I learned, and it could be my education. I have a degree in psychology, one in public health for my master's. So a lot of the stats, I guess, kind of are around those subjects. So maybe it was just because it was too basic for me, but he acted like it was like this really profound, crazy stats. And I'm like, this is actually extremely basic. So I should have DNF'd that. The Serpent and the Wings at Night. This was pretty good. I had a really good time reading this. It's a fantasy with vampires, and it has like a trial in it. I had a really good time reading that. I was surprised how much I liked that. And then I read Divine Rivals, the duology, and this series is so good to me. I love it. I actually liked Ruthless Vows, the second one, best, which I heard most people say the opposite. But I really liked the kind of the high stakes aspect of the Ruthless Vows. So I really enjoyed that. Okay, and then I read finally the last book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and unfortunately I feel mixed about this one. Every single one of the other books I gave 5 stars. They were such a good time, but the way that this one turned, I didn't necessarily love. I was super engaged the whole time, but I think I would have preferred, I guess, a different ending, and I don't want to give too much away, so I feel mixed on that one. Throne of Glass series, I finally started, and I'm still working my way through it. So I've kind of slowly worked my way through it. I think these two, if I recall, I would put under the pretty good category. I'm just going to skip around to the other ones. Now, I really liked Heir of Fire. I'm going to put that under So Good. I liked just the way the plot turned for that one. And then Queen of Shadows was so good too. This list is getting long. Okay. And then Empire Storms, I just finished now, and I didn't do the tandem read, you guys might notice, and I definitely regret it. This one ends on a cliffhanger, and there's 2 books that most people read in tandem together, where you'll read like a couple chapters and go to the next book and read a couple chapters. I chose not to do it because it was near the end of the year, and I was worried I wasn't going to get to my 100-book goal, and now I definitely regret it, because now I have to... It ended on such a cliffhanger, this book. Now I have to start the whole timeline with another set of characters. So I'm going to do, for Empire Storms, I actually really enjoyed this. So I think I'm actually going to put this under So Good. It's a good experience. And then I read a nonfiction called Hidden Potential, The Hidden Science of Achieving Greater Things. I really enjoyed this. It doesn't stand out for me enough to put it under So Good. But then... I read my worst book of the year, which was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I saw this all over booktube. People were talking about how they were reading it during the fall, and it has very fall vibes, and it has Gilmore vibes, and I love Gilmore Girls. And so I picked it up, and I was definitely disappointed. I should have DNF'd, because I remember reading it and just pushing through it, because I'm like, I think I was just feeling the pressure to get to my 100-book goal here at the end, and it was so bad. Oh, and I forgot to put The Assassin's Blade. So this is the prequel, I guess, to the Throne of Glass series. I read this out of order. That's why this was here from what people tend to recommend. People tend to recommend you start with this, and I chose to read it in the publishing order, I believe. I'm going to put this under pretty good. Then I have The Lands of Lost Borders, and this is a nonfiction about a woman who biked across the Silk Road, and I didn't love this as much as the bike touring book I read last year, which I'm going to put the title here because I can't remember what it was. Miles to Nowhere, I think was what it was. I didn't love this one as much. I think it was just the style of writing. She focuses a lot on like the history of the areas she's going through, less on the adventure itself. And for me, because I really miss doing some adventure cycle touring, I was really hoping to kind of get that feeling of being back on a bike tour, which I really got from Miles to Nowhere. It still was interesting, so I'm still going to put it under pretty good. But then I read The Dead Romantics this fall, and I loved this book so much more than I anticipated. Honestly, I debated putting this in my top books of the year because I loved it so much. I think, though, I'm going to, gosh, this list is getting long. Probably should zoom out. I think I'm going to put under So Good. It has great like fall, spooky, Halloweeny, Addams Family kind of vibes, which I loved. Then I kept with the fall theme and read The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And this I actually thought was really cute. I didn't love some aspects of it, so I am going to put it under, I feel, mixed. I think I gave it like a 3.5 stars. I mean, it has good autumn vibes if you're kind of wanting like an autumn vibe book. Gosh, I've been talking for a long time. Okay. All right, guys, we can push through this. All right, just a few more. The Happiness Advantage. This is a nonfiction book I read about how happier people are more successful. Shocker, I know. But this man, he's worked with different big companies on this as well, because there's so much data that has demonstrated that the happier you are, the more successful you're going to be. And so I thought this was really, really good. I'm going to put this under So Good. Oh, and then I read Caraval, and what's funny about this is people online tend to say that they don't like the series very much. So I kind of went into this with fairly low expectations. I was doing a long bike ride, and it was like the only book available at the library. So I just like put it on, and I ended up loving this book so much. So I'm surprised that it gets mixed feelings. I loved the whole environment of it. It's about this like magical carnival, and it's kind of like a mystery in it, and you don't know what's real, what's not. I had a really good experience reading it, so I'm going to put this under So Good. I haven't continued the series yet because I was also like in the middle of Throne of Glass series, and I'm like, okay, sometimes if I read too many fantasies at the same time, it's going to get too confusing. So I think I'm going to finish the Throne of Glass series, and then I'll work on the Caraval series next. And then I read The Anxious Generation. Oh, I talked about this in my end of my top books of the year. Everyone should read this, really. Every single person. Talks about how our mental health crisis correlates with like the smartphones and social media, and how it's causing the like destruction of community and like things that we as a species need, like socialization that's not just like on a phone. And oh, it's so good, guys. Like me and my husband and I read this together, and we talk about it all the time with every single person we know. Highly recommend that book. And then I read The Paradise Problem. This is a rom-com, and it doesn't stand out to me enough. I remember thinking it was pretty good. Like, I think I gave it a 4.25. So maybe I'll just put it under pretty good. But for some reason, I'm having a hard time remembering everything about it. Okay, and then I read another Frederick Bachman, and this is just a short little book. And every morning, the way home gets longer and longer. It's about a grandfather who has dementia, and he is talking with his grandson, and it's very sweet. I'm going to put under very good. And then I read Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity. So this is, you might notice, I read another longevity book as well this year. This one I did not enjoy as much, but I still thought there was lots of good information in this. I think what would have made this better is if the author had kind of had some more editing with it. It felt like it was a little too in the weeds with the science, and I think he could have reduced the technical jargon, and it would have been better. But I still recommend it, especially because he does compile a lot of research that he's done. He's less optimistic than the other author, which I like the other optimistic author a little bit better, the Harvard researcher, the longevity book. But this one was still pretty good. All right. And then I read Goodbye to Budapest. I was in Budapest at the time. My husband and I, for those of you that maybe don't follow me on my other channel, Pursuing Mountains, my husband and I rounded out the year going on to different Christmas markets in Europe. And one of the first stops was was Budapest. And so I was really interested in the history because it has a very unique history there. Unfortunately, I'm going to put it under I feel mixed because I did learn a lot, so I did enjoy that part of it. But I felt like it was too, like the characters didn't have enough personality. There was no nuance. It was very kind of like someone just wanted to tell the history and just threw characters in there to show it. So I think I'm putting it under I feel mixed because I still think if you want to know an overview of some of the history in Budapest, it could be good, like if you're traveling to it like me. But I didn't think it was the greatest writing, in my opinion. So then we are in the winter season and I wanted to read a cute rom-com, and I happened to be going through Dublin on my way out of Europe, and this book takes place in Dublin. So I'm like, okay, this is perfect. So on the flight over, and while in Dublin, I read this book and it was the perfect setting, and I'm sure it added to the experience. So I really enjoyed this. I'm still going to put it under pretty good because I feel like it's not going to stick with me forever, like so good, but I had a really good time reading that. And if you're looking for a cute holiday romance, definitely recommend. And then I read and finally finished. This book took me a while. It's one of those dense ones that I literally picked up so many times throughout the year and then stopped and then picked up again. So this is called The Underworld: Journey to the Depths of the Ocean. It is about the history of deep sea exploration. And I thought it was really interesting. You learn about like a shipwreck that's off the coast of Cartagena and like how they finally found it given different technology, and you learn about like the billionaires and stuff that are involved in this process, and then like some of the controversial stuff about like deep sea mining. It was super interesting. The author is very enthusiastic, which helps a lot. And she kind of gives her story of also doing a deep sea dive. I do think though, for me, this was a little bit dense. I think it could have been, sometimes it just felt like you're just reading the history, you know, like I think it could have been done maybe at times in a bit of more of an entertaining way. I still enjoyed it. I'm going to put it under pretty good. I just know it's going to be dense, and maybe take your time with it. So the next book I read was called Witches, Midwives, and Nurses. It was originally written in 1978. And I actually really enjoyed this book. It kind of gives the history of like how, you know, women for many years served as midwives and like did different medicinal work before the 1500s, I believe it was. And then slowly like medicine was deemed as a men's role, and they kind of lost their ability to do that, and they were eventually accused of like witches in some areas and just kind of threatened by women having this knowledge. And I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, but I don't know if I can consider it so good category. Like I don't know if it's always going to stick with me, but I do think it's an important read, but it's super short. All right, guys, the SD card's literally filled up. I think I've been talking way too long, but my last book was Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life. And this book was really good. It talks about how finding your purpose in life is really important to longevity, and they like goes over the different blue zones of areas that have like long longevity and some of the commonalities, focusing specifically mostly on this island in Japan. And I thought it was really good, but then there were some chapters where it just like gives you step-by-step instructions for certain Tai Chi and like yoga poses and stuff. And so that kind of lost me a little bit. It felt a little out of place. I think if I had just stuck to the message around finding your purpose in life and kind of the commonalities among like the centurions and stuff, that would have been sufficient. So I feel like I have to put under pretty good. However, the underlying messages in there for the chapters that focus on it were really good. All right, guys, that's it. That is my list. As you can see, the best of the best is quite minimal, which I kind of anticipated because these are kind of like my 6-star reads, like my favorite reads of the year. But everything under the so good category, I highly recommend as well. I really had a good time with them. Actually less in the bottom half. So it was overall a really good reading year for me. I enjoyed a lot of the books. I kind of learned what doesn't work for me and what does. And so I think it will help me in this coming year with selecting books I know I'll love. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if there's any books you highly recommend. Always looking for recommendations, and I'll see you guys on the next video.